I used to believe that a mother's love was enough, that if I cared for him well, protected him always, and gave up my dreams for his, one day he would understand. His name is Gabriel, and I remember the day I held him for the first time like it was yesterday. His tiny eyes trying to make sense of the world. It was just the two of us from the beginning. His father, who once swore he loved me, left before Gabriel's first birthday. I promised myself my son would never feel the absence. And for a long time, he didn't. Everything I had became school lunches, notebooks, or a private doctor when he was sick. When he turned 10, I sold my last family heirlooms to pay for a robotics course. He wanted to be an engineer. His eyes sparkled when he said it. Sometimes I skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. I worked as a seamstress during the day and a caregiver at night. I slept little, ate less, but my pride was watching him grow, study, and succeed. He was kind, polite. He used to call me my queen in his Mother's Day cards. I kept every one of those notes like sacred relics. To this day, some are tucked in a wooden box on the top shelf of my closet, faded but still alive inside me. I never imagined that one day he'd be ashamed of me. The first time I felt it was subtle. He was in college, and I came to visit him with a homemade cake. His friends looked at me sideways, and he introduced me quickly with a nervous smile. "This is my mom." That hurt more than any scream ever could, but I didn't say anything. I smiled, handed him the cake, and pretended not to notice how he rushed me out the door. On the train ride home, I held the empty cake tin on my lap like it was a piece of my heart he didn't want anymore. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that every young man pulls away a little, that I should be proud he was becoming independent. I tried not to dwell on the fact that I wasn't invited to his graduation dinner, or that I only found out through a photo. His girlfriend posted online. "He's busy," I told myself. "He loves you. He's just growing." But deep down, something in me began to quiet. I started talking to myself more than to him. I kept asking the same silent question. When did I stop being enough? Still, I never missed a birthday. Never failed to send money when he asked, even if it meant borrowing. I kept believing that my patience, my sacrifices, would one day be acknowledged. That maybe, someday, he'd come back not just for help, but for me. For the woman who gave him everything. It started with missed calls, small delays, messages left unread, unanswered. At first, I thought nothing of it. I told myself he must be overwhelmed, busy with work, with marriage, with life. But then it became routine. Days without a word, then weeks. I'd send a message. Something simple like, "I hope you're eating well," or, "I saw a flower today that reminded me of the park we used to go to," and nothing would come back. I could see he'd read it. That little seen notification blinking like a door I wasn't allowed to enter. I waited like mothers do. Quiet, loyal, hopeful. He used to call me every Sunday. That tradition faded without a goodbye. One day the phone simply stopped ringing, and I didn't ask why. I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want to push him further away. So I did what mothers do when they feel forgotten. I tried harder. I sent care packages, hand-wrote letters, emailed old photos with warm captions. "Remember this beach? You were afraid of the waves, but I told you to hold my hand and trust the sea." He didn't respond. Not once. But I kept sending them anyway, as if love could bridge silence. Then came the day I saw a photo of his new apartment online. Spacious, modern, filled with light. There was a party. A housewarming, it seemed. Dozens of people, music, drinks, a toast. Everyone was tagged but me. I scrolled through the images, searching for any trace of something I'd given him. A blanket, a photo, frame, that old bookshelf we painted together when he was 12. Nothing. It was like I didn't exist in that space. I stared at the screen, trying not to let the emptiness spill out of me. But it did, quietly, like a slow leak from a place I didn't know could still break. A few weeks later, I found out he'd been in town and didn't visit. Ruth, my neighbor, mentioned seeing him at the local cafe with his wife. "He looked different," she said. "Sharper, like a man with places to be." I smiled and, Nodded, pretending I already knew. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, tracing the rim of a chipped mug he gave me years ago for Mother's Day. "Best mom ever," it said in fading gold letters. I ran my thumb over the word ever, like I was trying to make it come back to life. I couldn't. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the invisibility. It was being erased not with violence, but with absence. It was realizing he was curating a life where I didn't fit, where my wrinkles and plain dresses, my stories of struggle, my simple meals didn't match the sleek image he wanted to present. It was being removed from the photo album while everyone else smiled for the camera. I remember asking myself, when did my love become an inconvenience? When did the woman who raised him become a liability? My birthday came and went that year without a call, not even a message. I sat by the window with a slice of cake I bought myself. Store-bought, too sweet, nothing like the ones he used to ask for. I lit a candle and sang softly, more to the memory than the present. Then I made a wish I never thought I'd have to make. I wish I could stop waiting. I wish I could stop hoping for something that would never come. But the truth is, mothers don't stop hoping. We just learn to fold the hope smaller, quieter, less visible to others. I was still clinging to the idea that he loved me deep down, that maybe he was just lost in the noise of ambition and appearances. But then came the letter that broke the illusion once and for all. It arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under my door in a thick envelope with my full name, printed in a font too formal for affection. I knew before I opened it. My hands trembled, but not from surprise. The words were as cold as I feared. "Please do not attend the upcoming family reunion. It's best we part ways for now. No mom, no kindness, just the signature, Gabriel, like a business transaction." I reread it 3 times before sitting down. The kitchen felt like it had emptied itself of air. Even the refrigerator seemed to go silent. I stared at the letter, not crying, just stunned, like a body that knows it's been hit but hasn't registered the pain yet. I folded it neatly and placed it on the table, next to the watering can. Then I went outside, where the garden waited. My hands dug into the soil like they were looking for answers. But there were none. Just dirt and roots and the quiet company of flowers that never asked me to be anything more than present. The next day, I saw a post online. My niece Ava was showing off the invitation to the family reunion. A thick navy ribbon, gold lettering, smiles in the comments. "So honored to be part of the Whitmore legacy," one person wrote. Another said, "Looking forward to celebrating family roots." I wasn't just excluded. I was deliberately erased. Not a mistake, a decision. I called Ava, hoping maybe she'd say it was a mix-up, that my invite was lost. But when I hinted at the event, she paused. "Auntie, I thought you knew." She tried to cover it with kindness, but the truth was already out. I was no longer family in their eyes. The final confirmation came 2 days later, when I accidentally overheard a call on speakerphone. Gabriel talking to someone, maybe Lydia. She doesn't fit the image we're trying to project. Her presence complicates things. I felt like my chest cracked open. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a complication, a detail to be edited out of his narrative. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark and remembered every sacrifice I had made, every sleepless night, every deferred dream, every silent prayer. I whispered to myself, "You gave him everything, and now you are nothing to him." But that wasn't entirely true, because in that moment of stillness, a tiny ember sparked inside me. Not anger, not revenge, something older, something deeper, the beginning of a decision, a shift. I could not undo what he had done. I could not force love where it no longer lived, but I could choose. I could choose what to do with my name, my legacy, my story. I could choose to no longer be invisible, not to the world, but to myself. That night, I pulled out the trust documents from the drawer and stared at Gabriel's name on the beneficiary line. I stared until it blurred. Then I reached for a pen. By the time I reached for the trust paperwork, I wasn't acting out of spite. It was clarity. cold, slow, and deliberate, like a woman pulling weeds from a garden too long neglected. I hadn't opened that folder in years. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old ink. My fingers brushed against the tabs. Daniel's name, the deed to the old house, our signatures when we first created the fund after his passing, for Gabriel's future. That's what we'd called it. For his future. Not knowing that one day, that same child would treat my past, my name, as a burden. I thought about the day Daniel died. Gabriel was just 6, too small to understand death, too brave to cry in public. He clutched my hand at the cemetery like it was the last solid thing in the world. I remember his suit didn't fit right. The sleeves too long, the shoes too tight. He kept looking up at me, waiting for answers I didn't have. "We'll figure it out," I told him. Together. And we did. I sold the house, the one with the lemon tree and the white fence Daniel loved. The walls whispered memories I could no longer bear. We moved into a small apartment. Clean, modest, but ours. Back then, I believed we were surviving together. I worked morning shifts at the middle school, evenings at the library, and during summers, I tutored kids for extra money. My doctorate slipped away, one semester at a time, until the university sent a letter confirming I was no longer enrolled. Gabriel found that letter first. He asked if I'd go back one day. I smiled and lied gently. Maybe someday. I watched his face light up whenever he won a science fair or fixed something with parts from the junkyard. His mind was brilliant, and my sacrifices felt like investments. Surely he'd remember. Surely he'd repay. Not in money, but in gratitude. Years later, when he came home with startup dreams and sleepless eyes, I fed him soup and listened. He spoke of investors, apps, beta testing. I didn't understand it all, but I nodded and asked questions. Then came the ask. "Just a small cosign," he said. "The banks don't know me yet, but they'll see." I agreed. Of course. Not once, but 3 times. The 3rd time I had to dip into my pension just to convince the underwriter. He said it was temporary. "You're the only one I trust, Mom." That line felt like a gift back then. Now I see it as the first string in a web I didn't know I was caught in. When Techline got its first seed funding, he called me breathless with excitement. "We're official," he said. "You're going to be proud." I told him I already was. But something shifted after that. The calls slowed. The warmth cooled. And suddenly he was only reaching out when he needed something. A signature. A name for a lease. A quiet favor I didn't always understand, but always gave. I told myself this was part of success. That he was busy. That he still loved me even if he no longer showed it. I didn't see it then, but I was slowly being turned into a silent financial instrument. When the reunion letter arrived, I thought that was the betrayal. The words were cold, but they weren't the sharpest cut. That came 3 days later, with a phone call from my attorney, Elliot. He told me calmly, so calmly it scared me, that Gabriel had submitted paperwork to use the trust as collateral for a private lending deal. Without notifying me. Without permission. He'd signed documents claiming to be the trust's manager, knowing full well he wasn't. "He was banking on your silence," Elliot said. "On your trust." I listened in silence, the phone hot in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down. Elliot continued. "The loan was through a third-party shell company in Nevada. Highly unstable," he said. "Potentially fraudulent. If the deal had gone bad, I would have been liable. Me, the woman who hadn't even received an invitation to the family reunion. The mother he erased now being positioned to carry the legal fallout of his recklessness. He didn't just exclude you," Elliot said quietly. "He gambled with you." And suddenly, everything made sense. The timing, the silence, the lawyer's language in the reunion letter. He wasn't just pushing me away emotionally. He was clearing the path to exploit me safely, without consequence. I hung up and sat in the dark. The kitchen buzzed with the hum of the refrigerator. My hands rested flat on the table. I imagined all the nights I stayed up sewing hems, counting coins, packing lunches, all the times I whispered prayers over him while he slept. "Please, God, keep him safe, let him grow into a good man. I thought I had failed, but now I saw the truth. I hadn't failed. I had been faithful. He was the one who broke the covenant. Quietly, calculated. And I wasn't angry. I was done. The next morning, I called Elliot and made it official. Gabriel would be removed from the trust. I had already chosen a new beneficiary. Her name was Jade, my goddaughter, 19, working 2 part-time jobs while raising her siblings after her mother's overdose. She wasn't blood, but she was loyalty. She called to check on me. She brought groceries when I had the flu. She still called me ma'am no matter how many times I told her she didn't have to. And when I told her I was proud of her, she cried. She's never asked me for anything, I told Elliot, and she still gives. As I signed the final trust reassignment, each stroke of my pen felt like stitching shut a wound. No trembling, no hesitation, just truth. Gabriel would be notified by close of business. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean, like someone who had finally washed off years of being overlooked, undervalued, overwritten. Later that evening, the calls began. First Gabriel, then Lydia, then a lawyer. 47 missed calls by noon. I didn't answer a single one. I went outside and dug my fingers into the soil. The camellias were blooming early. The garden didn't care about betrayal. It just needed water, care, and sunlight. The next morning, Gabriel showed up at my doorstep. No warning, just a sharp knock, like someone entitled to answers. I saw his silhouette through the curtain. Navy blazer, polished shoes, too formal for Charleston's summer. When I opened the door, I didn't speak. I stepped aside, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want Ruth or the mailman to witness the storm. He walked in like the house still belonged to him, like the years hadn't widened the gap between the boy who once made me macaroni necklaces and the man now glaring at me like a threat. We sat at the kitchen table, same place where he used to do homework, his legs too short to reach the floor. Now his voice was clipped, tight. "This trust," he began. "You had no right to change it without talking to me." I kept my voice even. "I had every right." He leaned in, visibly agitated. "You blindsided me. Lydia's parents are furious. Do you understand what this signals to our investors?" I didn't flinch. I folded my hands. "You didn't send me an invitation." He blinked. "What?" "To the reunion," I said. "You didn't even pretend I mattered." He exhaled sharply, a sound of arrogance and annoyance. "That wasn't intentional. It's just optics. We're building a brand." He said the word like it was sacred. "Sometimes we have to curate the legacy." I stood slowly. "You curated your version of me out of your life long before I signed any documents." His mouth opened, then closed. He knew I was right. "We can still fix this," he insisted. "Say it was a misunderstanding, a health scare, something sympathetic. Just reassign the trust and we'll spin it clean." I shook my head. "It's not about the optics, Gabriel. It's about finally choosing peace." His voice cracked. "This isn't you. You don't do things like this." I looked at him, really looked. I didn't, but I do now. I saw it then, the shift in his face. Not remorse, not sorrow, strategy. He was calculating next steps. When he stood, he didn't apologize, just muttered, "We'll see what our lawyers advise," and left. I didn't follow. I didn't shut the door until I heard his rental car pull away. Inside, the thick manila envelope from his attorney still sat unopened on the table. I didn't touch it. Some truths don't need to be read to be understood. That night, I made tea and sat on the porch. The air was thick with jasmine. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. For the first time in decades, there was no emotional leash dragging me behind someone else's needs. I hadn't cut him off with hate. I'd simply let go, like a bird whose wings finally remembered their purpose. And when I whispered to myself, "I still love you," I meant it, but I added something new. "I love myself now too." The words didn't shake. They settled in my bones like a blessing. The next morning, I didn't rush to check my phone. I already knew what I'd find. Missed calls, long voicemails, emails marked urgent. I let the phone sit face down on the table. I didn't owe anyone my attention anymore. Not after everything. I opened the window instead and let the light in. The kitchen smelled of coffee and old wood. Outside, the blueberry bushes were thirsty, and the soil had hardened overnight. I picked up my gloves and went out without saying a word to anyone. There's a sacred kind of silence that comes after choosing yourself for the first time. It doesn't shout, it breathes. By noon, there were 47 missed calls. The voicemails ranged from angry to desperate. Gabriel, Lydia, a lawyer named Calvin. One voice said I was putting the company's reputation at risk. Another said, "We are deeply concerned." But not one voice said, "I'm sorry." Not one said, "Thank you, Mom." I listened to 3 of them while standing at the sink, and then I deleted them. All of them. I didn't just erase the messages. I erased the dynamic, the old script, the idea that I must always be reachable, responsible, available. I wasn't their emergency plan anymore. I was my own beginning. The letter from Graham's attorney arrived by courier that evening. Heavy, thick, printed on stiff ivory paper. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The contents were predictable. Legal pressure wrapped in artificial concern. "You're jeopardizing everything," the envelope likely said. But I'd already decided. I wouldn't read anything that used fear as a disguise. I slid the envelope into the drawer where I keep expired coupons and old receipts. That's where empty promises belong, with other forgotten things. Then I brewed tea, lit a candle, and roasted chicken for one. Not as a symbol of loneliness, but of fullness. Of choosing to be whole on my own terms. Days passed. The silence grew richer. I started volunteering at the community center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Taught a small group of young women how to read loan contracts, how to open savings accounts that no one else could touch. I printed materials myself, brought snacks. No one asked for much, but they listened closely. We weren't just talking about money. We were talking about ownership, of life, of choices, of dignity. And somewhere between explaining compound interest and teaching someone how to set a password, I felt something grow inside me. Not pride, not revenge, purpose, the quiet kind. That Friday, I took the cedar box from the hallway closet, the one with the photos, the cards, the little memories only I ever cherished. I pulled out a picture of Gabriel when he was 8, holding a crayon trophy. Best mom ever. I touched the edge of the frame, felt the worn paper, and let the memories come. Not to punish myself, but to honor. The truth. I had loved him completely. I had given everything I had, and that love was real. But love is not a contract of eternal servitude. Love doesn't mean tolerating erasure. I let go to protect myself. I whispered, "I still love you, but I love myself now too." Then came Jade. She met me at the bank, wearing the same faded green hoodie she wore all winter. Her hands were nervous, her eyes wide. She kept looking at the marble floor like it might crack under her feet. I told her she belonged there. We sat with the banker and went through the trust. Her name was primary now. The funds would be used only for education, housing, and health. Her future, her peace. "No one's ever done something like this for me," she said, her voice small, shaking. "You earned it, sweetheart," I replied. I just opened the door. When we left the bank, she hugged me without asking. I held her longer than I thought I would. Not because I was replacing Gabriel, but because I was restoring myself. Giving, not out of obligation, but out of belief. She called me ma'am again. I let her. Some things don't need correcting. That night, I went home and made space on the shelf where Gabriel's school trophies used to sit. I placed a photo of Jade's acceptance letter there. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like continuity, the kind that doesn't need blood to be sacred. A week later, Gabriel came back. He didn't knock with fury this time. He stood on the porch with tired eyes and a loosened tie. "I just want to talk," he said. I opened the door but didn't move aside. "We've already said everything," I told him. "No," he said. "You've said everything. I haven't." I saw the flicker of the boy he once was. But flickers are not fires. And I didn't mistake his regret for transformation. I made mistakes, he said. I was trying to build something. I didn't mean to hurt you. I nodded. But you did. Over and over. He looked down. Can we fix this? I answered simply, not with words. He stood there a while, then left. No shouting, no lawyers, just the sound of gravel under his shoes as he walked back to the car. And I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I made tea, folded laundry, lit a candle, and when the sun set, I went outside and whispered to the jasmine, "Thank you for blooming anyway." That night, I packed a suitcase. Just a few things: comfortable shoes, a book, a journal. I left the house before dawn, drove without music, just the sound of tires on the road and breath in my chest. I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. At a small inn by the coast, I watched the waves for hours, wrote letters I didn't send. One of them said, "You didn't break me. You reminded me that I needed mending." Another simply read, "You can't unlove a child, but you can stop letting them undo you." I slept with the window open, the salt air washing through the room like absolution. And when I woke, I felt something inside me rise. Not joy, not peace, but readiness. Readiness to live the years I had left not as someone's mother, someone's mistake, someone's invisible provider, but as a woman with a name, a voice, a life. Sometimes love looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I deserve more." And sometimes it's all of those things. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you gave everything to, if you've ever felt erased by the very person you brought into this world, if you're still waiting for an apology that may never come, please know this: you are not alone. What you gave in love was never wasted, and the respect they denied you, you can still give to yourself. I still love you, but I love myself now too.